Hello, I'm Sophie Ikenya. Welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories. Mali's new president is sworn in. Retired Army Colonel Ban Dao promises a civilian handover within 18 months. But sanctions stay in place for now.
I swear in front of God and the people of Mali to uphold the Republican regime.
Well, I'll be talking live to Amina Mohammed, the UN Deputy Secretary General, and ask who is now calling the shots in Mali and what are the implications for the wider Sahel region. Crackdown in Sudan. An award-winning filmmaker is among several artists sentenced for being a public nuisance. As the coronavirus is still keeping international tourists away, we report on how Kenya's Maasai community are losing a vital source of income.
We have had a lot of problems because we couldn't get money to buy food, and the livestock market was also closed.
Also in the program, all the latest sports news. Could Super Eagles defender William Troost Ekong be on his way to English Championship side Watford? Well, thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Mali's new president has been sworn into office 5 weeks after the overthrow of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Former Defense Minister Ban Dao was picked by the coup leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, to head a transitional government until elections, which are expected in 18 months. Colonel Goïta will be his vice president, but the West African Regional Group, ECOWAS, says it will not lift the sanctions it imposed on Mali until a civilian prime minister has been nominated. BBC's Olivier Weber reports.
A tall figure strides onto the stage of the Bamako Conference Center. This is Ban Dao, Mali's new interim president. The swearing-in ceremony took place under the watchful eye of the country's Supreme Court judges and many army officers in uniform. Also attending, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, representative of the ECOWAS bloc. Ban Dao promised that he would rule for a maximum of 18 months before staging nationwide elections.
I swear in front of God and the people of Mali to uphold the Republican regime, to follow and enforce the Constitution, the Transition Chart and the law, to fulfill my duties for the people, to uphold the democratic achievements, to ensure national unity, the country's independence and the integrity of the national territory.
At 70, Ban Dao is largely unknown outside military circles. He's a retired colonel and former defense minister, chosen this week by the military leadership who overthrew the previous president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, in August. The coup leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, was also sworn in today as vice president. Observers are asking who will really be in charge. A new prime minister will be named in the next few days. ECOWAS insists that post must be filled by a civilian before lifting the economic sanctions it imposed on Mali since the coup.
Regarding the sanctions, and in accordance with the decisions of the heads of state and government following the swearing-in of the transitional president, these sanctions will be lifted when a civilian prime minister is named.
Mali's West African neighbors and the international community are keen for a stable leadership in Mali, capable of handling the worsening security crisis. Jihadi groups still threaten communities in the north and center of the country, despite the presence of thousands of French soldiers and United Nations peacekeepers. Can the new leadership succeed where previous ones have failed? That's what the region and the international community will be hoping for. Olivier Weber, BBC News.
So what happens next in Mali matters not only for the country itself, but for the entire Sahel region. Will there be a stable, calm and successful transition, as the president said? And what is the reaction of the international community? Well, I can now speak to Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, who joins us live from New York. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. We have a new president in Mali. What's the U.S. take on this transition period and specifically the leadership?
I think it's a very good day today. This is the beginning of a step towards that transition. And we hope to see a prime minister sworn in, a civilian prime minister sworn in as soon as possible. The expectations of the Malian population are very high. There is a greater challenge in fighting the terrorism in Mali, but also in the region. And so a stable Mali is important for Mali, but important for the region. We believe that this transition, and it's supported by ECOWAS-led leadership, is really important to getting back the stability and back on track again. Just less than a decade ago, Mali was on track to meet the MDGs, and then we had the crisis that followed. So we think it's a good day, a good step in the right direction.
How closely will you work with the Mali or the new team now, given there was a coup really involved? We now have a retired army colonel sworn in. His deputy also is an army person.
Well, I mean, of course, we don't condone coups at all. And what we have now is a situation where ECOWAS-led mediation is trying to put a transition in place. And in that negotiation, this is a president that is going to take that forward with commitments, with a timeline for that transition to happen to a democratically elected government. That's what we're going to support. And important there that we support the ECOWAS-led leadership. We have our SRSG, Anadif, who is there supporting that, and we continue to do so with the United Nations and with our partners.
What would happen, for example, if what you envision doesn't take place? For example, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, at the UN meeting earlier this week, threatened to pull out security support if there's no return to civilian rule. I mean, there's also been reaction from ECOWAS in the sense of sanctions. The UN appears not to be actively involved since the situation happened, especially now that things have changed.
I think that's not correct. We have been actively involved and part of all the meetings, but as I said, it's really important to recognize the ECOWAS-led leadership. And we believe that the sanctions in place are important because what we really want to see is that transition to civilian rule. And of course, this international partners, of course, support as well. So I think the sooner that we can get a prime minister that is a civilian in place, it further endorses the track of the transition towards civilian rule. And sanctions are an important part of this right now. And we hope that they can be lifted because, of course, people in Mali are suffering. It is exacerbating a situation that is already not very good for the people of Mali.
And there's still concerns about really the stability of the country and the region, of course. Is there anything specific you think that can be done that's different, specifically to deal with the insurgency both in Mali and the region?
Well, we've continued to support that. There has been there are many forces that are there. Our mission is there. The forces from the French, the SG has continued to call for an African force there that is supported by the UN Security Council, and that would go a long way to helping. And this is what we need to see across the region because the fight against terrorism is a regional fight. It's an international support that one needs. And of course, all this has been exacerbated now by the global crisis around the pandemic. So it's further just exacerbating already a very bad situation. Stability is needed, a global response and support for Africa to try to address this.
So what would you do, for example? What's the plan to help those you've mentioned there, the displaced people? Because we're talking about women, children, especially during this pandemic, millions displaced.
Millions displaced, and I think the leadership in Mali needs to understand that as they move forward in this transition. And so, as I said, the sooner we have the steps they need to take to lift those sanctions, less challenges and burden, particularly on the shoulders of women and children. But let me also say that within the transition, it's going to be really important to see the voices of women's leadership in this transition, in the mediation, in getting to a point where they will have a democratically elected government in the nearest possible future.
And just briefly, what would be your ultimate message for the people of Mali? What hope can you inject to that country, really?
Well, I think the hope is that there are people in Mali who are capable of shaping their future, and they should be allowed to come round that table to do so. The international community, but more importantly, the region, the heads of state and government of the region through ECOWAS have put attention on this with the AU, with the UN, and convening and enabling an environment to make sure that those steps can be taken for a peaceful transition. And I think this is what we all need to get behind, is not to take the support away, but to bring the support, the humanitarian support that is needed. Right now, the humanitarian plan for Mali is short-funded. We need to have that fully funded. We have the socioeconomic effect of COVID, which also needs support in the stimulus package. So there are various support mechanisms that can be added to the one that will take part in how we mediate a smooth and peaceful transition to the next government. And we need to make sure those pieces are in place and that we're giving the adequate support as and when is needed. And it's needed now. It's urgent.
All right. Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, thank you for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, nearly a dozen artists in Sudan have been sentenced to 2 months in prison after a court found them guilty of causing a public nuisance when their play rehearsal was broken up by attackers last month. One of them is the highly acclaimed Sudanese-American film director Hajooj Kuka. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Hollywood has joined international calls for his release and that of his fellow artists. There is concern that despite Sudan's efforts to democratize the country, artists and activists are still being targeted. BBC Africa correspondent Catherine Biaruhanga reports.
The BBC received these exclusive images of filmmaker Hajooj Kuka, secretly filmed from the prison just outside of Khartoum, where he spent the past week. Hajooj says he's been beaten and his once knee-length dreadlocks have been forcibly cut in half. In an audio recording, he reassures supporters that he and his co-accused are being treated better after their case drew local and global attention.
I hope it's going to make a huge change for all the artists in Sudan and all the activists, and actually all the prisoners and all the people who are suffering from these rules that imprison people and give power to the court system that's beyond what is included in the human rights and everything.
The 44-year-old rose to prominence in 2014 with his film Beats of the Antonov, which told the story of the people of the Nuba Mountains, where rebels have fought Sudan's government for nearly a decade. It won the People's Choice Award for a documentary at the Toronto International Film Festival. In August, Hajooj was arrested with 10 others during a play rehearsal in Khartoum, and they've now been sentenced to prison terms over public disturbance charges. They believe they've been targeted for their politics. Hajooj was inducted into Hollywood's Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences earlier this year. It joined calls from filmmakers around the world for the group's release.
The international community in demanding.
Sudan is in the middle of a delicate political transition. Mass protests last year toppled Omar al-Bashir's 30-year regime. Hajooj and his co-accused were heavily involved in the movement. A joint military and civilian authority has since taken over, but campaigners are pushing for deeper social and democratic reforms and say some artists and activists continue to be targeted.
Women's rights and human rights are still in a very volatile and fragile situations. that the actors from the past regime, whether in the police or in the judiciary, and the law, the law itself, the legal framework itself, is still not fundamentally reformed or changed.
The transitional government is yet to comment on Hajooj and his colleagues' case. The artists hope they'll be released on appeal, but say they're happy to serve out their sentences, if only to show that more reforms are needed in Sudan. Catherine Biarhanga, BBC News.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, he won 2 Olympic gold medals, 2 World Championships, and also set 27 world records. But what were Haile Gebrselassie 5 biggest feats? We hear from the man himself. Welcome back. You're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Communities in private wildlife conservation areas in Kenya are struggling to feed their families as the tourism industry continues to suffer from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, in the Maasai Mara National Reserve, communities lease their land to investors in exchange for an annual fee. This unique economic model helps encourage wildlife conservation and the preservation of Maasai culture. However, this year it's very different. The BBC's Ferdinand Omondi reports.
These glittering ornaments are a worldwide trademark of the Maasai community. The casual and ceremonial wear is a big money maker, mainly for foreign tourists. But not this year.
When the Europeans used to come, we will sell necklaces, bracelets. We will use the money to educate our children. The tourists currently visiting are Africans like us. They're not interested in manyatas. We depend a lot on Europeans, so we pray they come back soon.
Here at the Siana Conservancy, the Maasai community built this cultural village in the style of an authentic manyata. This way they can lead their normal lives and at the same time welcome guests in exchange for cash. That tap dried up when tourists cancelled or postponed their travel plans because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Since everything was stopped, we have had a lot of problems because we couldn't get money to buy food and the livestock market was also closed. So we've just been slaughtering our animals.
In a community conservancy like this, landowners lease their land to investors who build tourist camps and lodges. Tourists who come to marvel at Kenya's wildlife then pay handsomely to spend their nights close to the animals. In exchange, the investors pay the communities an agreed amount which sustains the community's needs. Now, a trip to the Mara isn't just about watching the wild animals. It is also about the experience of sleeping in a luxury tent like this, which is not fenced from the reserve, so there's virtually no distance between you and the wild animals. But the experience of that thrill costs money. Money which is used to run the camp and also benefits the community. The absence of tourists has threatened that model.
This camp was really fully booked up to December. But we got cancellations, and last year this camp alone contributed $35,000 towards the community. This year it will be zero. We have come and sat down with the landowners' representatives so that next year's lease, we pay it, yes, but probably stagger it in months.
The result of the cutbacks means sending a fraction of workers home. It also means communities have to scrap by to survive. In the conservancies, this is now the new normal until everything gets back to normal. Ferdinand Omondi, BBC News, Masai Mara.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter, take it away.
Many thanks, Sophie. And let's start with some transfer news. Nigeria defender William Troost-Ekong could be on his way to English Championship side Watford. Reports suggest that talks between Watford and Italian side Indonesia are at an advanced stage for the 27-year-old who has played 42 times for the Super Eagles. Another player on the move is Tanzania and Aston Villa striker Mbwana Samata. He's completed a 5-year deal with Turkish side Fenerbahce. The 27-year-old only joined Villa in January for £8.5 million from Genk in Belgium, but has failed to have the desired impact, scoring only twice in 16 appearances. Now, I must tell you that move has annoyed a lot of fans in Tanzania who are saying that they will no longer support Aston Villa. And Chelsea manager Frank Lampard says the club's latest signing, Senegal goalkeeper Edouard Mendy, will not be ready for this weekend's game against West Bromwich Albion. The 28-year-old completed a move from French side Club Rennes on Tuesday after agreeing a 4-year deal. Now, it's no longer a secret that the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc on sports across the world. Football's world governing body, FIFA, recently revealed the sports losses could be near £11 billion. It also announced that it has created a fund to help federations around the world. Africa's continental body, CAF, has also created a fund to help member nations. So why are football clubs in Nigeria complaining that they have not received any help? African football reporter Oluwashina Okeleji put the question to the head of the Nigerian Football Federation, Amaju Pinnick.
We've not received one from CAF, we've not received from FIFA. Once we receive, we are talking to PwC so that it's not just distribution. They have to monitor how it's done. They have to be part of what we are doing in ensuring that it gets to the end user. And that's it. So,
some of the clubs are complaining, they're crying already.
No, when that time comes, once we get the money, we notify the ministry. And that's what we do. The only one we have right now is what we have been able to warehouse from our own area. You know, like from our Nike fund, from our Coca-Cola funds, we house that. Because if you consider it's $2 million, 1.5 coming from FIFA, 300,000 from CAF, then 200,000 from the NFF, which we have listed. We are going to religiously again adhere to that.
Now, what more can you say about Haile Gebrselassie? 2 Olympic gold medals, 4 world championships, and 27 records. But which is his greatest feat? Here's the man himself.
I went to Atlanta to run both 5,000 and 10,000 meters. I didn't work on the 5,000 meters. Even the 10 was not easy. I had a big problem of my leg. I won the 10,000. Since I started athletics, I was dreaming to become an Olympic champion. When I broke that world record, that night, that evening, wow. The atmosphere in Zurich, unforgettable. The record was by Kenyan Moses Kiptanui. He broke, from my record from Hanglo. That record was, the only record, I had. And why he broke, my record? And he was the first one to come and shake my hand and to congratulate me. I had to run, every day. 3,000 meters final, 1,500 meters semi-final, and 1,500 meters final. 3 days. 3 number 1. The time was fast, and I was fresh too. Reaching the 30K, I knew it's going to be a world record. Because the last 2K was struggling. Of course, I had to fight, and finally I achieved it. Number 1, of course, Sydney 2000. That was an amazing moment with my friend Paul Tergat. The race between me and Paul Tergat, especially the last 100 meters. Until, the last 20 meters, Paul was in front of me. I don't say I beat, Paul. I didn't beat Paul. Believe me. I could pass, Paul, the last 20 meters. It was a hand of God, what Maradona said. That day was a lack of God. Sometimes, there is a picture in front. They put, who was number 1. Of course, people, they know Haile Gebrselassie one. They say, oh, that's Haile. But you cannot see any difference. I wish to have, 2 gold. Should be 1 for Paul. That is the reason why it's number 1.
And Sophie, I can confidently say that meeting you is my greatest feat. I mean, what can I say?
Yeah, amazing there. Well, don't forget you can get in touch with me and some of the team on social media. I'm Atsi Kenya. Thanks for your company.